Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for the whether in live here in person or watching the video of the 2024 Elegant Trogon Survey planning meeting for the Huachuca Mountains and the Chiricahuas Mountains. These are the last two of 5 surveys that we do, 5 different mountain ranges, and they are 2 of the bigger mountain ranges. They got to be the 2 biggest. Huachucas for sure, the biggest mountain range that we survey, and are both excellent for Trogon. The Chiricahuas are especially famous for Elegant Trogon, so they're really interesting surveys. We've completed 3 of our 5 already, and it's been really interesting to see how this is going. The first 2 were much lower counts than normal. So the Huachucas west of Nogales was low, much lower than normal. And the Patagonias were about, I'd say, half of what we usually get. I haven't looked at all the data yet, but from my initial sort of look through at the data, but the Senoritas seem very high, higher than usual. So we'll see. It'll be very interesting to see how the total shakes out between the 5 mountain ranges. And of course, we still have the biggest one ahead of us. The Huachucas is the largest range with the most routes and usually has the highest count of Trogon. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how this all shakes out. Okay. So we'll talk about some logistics and where everyone can find information. I have sent out a lot of emails that have lots of information about the surveys themselves, things specific to each of these 2 surveys, the Huachucas and Chiricahuas, as well as the sheet on people's routes, what routes you're assigned to. So that has all gone out, and we're going to talk about logistics specific to the Huachucas and Chiricahuas, and then after that, a little bit about Trogons and how to identify them and what the different calls can mean and what you can infer from that. And then at the end, we'll do questions. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, a few more people still joining. So I will try to keep an eye on that. All right. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen. It's very important I do this correctly. Okay. So the Elegant Trogon Survey is one of the flagship surveys of the Arizona Important Bird Areas program. It's just a really cool program. It's statewide. I do co-coordinate it with Tice Sipley up at Audubon Southwest, and it is statewide. And the Elegant Trogon Survey is one of the bigger surveys that we do all year. And the Arizona IBA program is fiscally sponsored by Arizona Game and Fish, and they're always very interested in this data. And we also share it with the Coronado and other partners. So this is really us monitoring pretty much the entire breeding population of Elegant Trogons for the United States. It's pretty much all in Southeast Arizona, and it's nearly all within these 5 mountain ranges. So this is a pretty important survey, and the fact we've been tracking it for over 10 years now is leading to some really interesting data and some really interesting trends that we can follow over time. Okay, so this is our hub, this website here, it's Arizona IBA, aziba.org, and this is the website of the Arizona Important Bird Areas program, and it's co-managed by Tucson Audubon and Audubon Southwest. So this is where we put a lot of our products meant for the public, like fun little booklets and like handouts, like sort of PDFs about each of the 48 important bird areas. But it's the survey resources tab that has where I put, through Tyson, I have put everything meant for these surveys. So click on the survey resources tab. I think it's open. Oh, I don't have it open. You go to survey resources tab, and it opens up. It's a portal to various pages for different surveys. So stuff like the winter longspur surveys, etc. But there is an Elegant Trogon page. And so that is linked right here. And it has some nice background information about the survey. It has this year's dates with the sign-up links. They're now all inactive, so I don't have anyone sneak in when I don't realize, and then they don't get a route or something. It's got information generally about Trogons here, which we'll talk about at the end, which is really very interesting. And then I have a specific page for each of the 5 surveys. So I have a Huachuca Mountains page and a Chiricahuas Mountains page, which we'll show in a moment. And then I also have the link here to enter your data. So we do, everyone enters their own Trogon data via an online Google survey, and we'll look at that too, to make sure everyone gets a look at that and knows where they're going to be entering their data. And then I do have this thing at the bottom here about what to expect on a Trogon survey. I put this in the email several times, but if this is your first Trogon survey, please do watch this video. It's pretty short, it's only a few minutes long, and it just sort of lets you know what to expect. These are sort of an all morning commitment. Some of these routes are pretty far away. If you live in Tucson or a city like that, these or Phoenix even, I have people sometimes come down from Phoenix to do these. These areas can be quite far away, and you need to sort of be aware of that before you get into it. So this explains all that and sort of some of the logistics in terms of sometimes we're walking on roads, sometimes we're walking on trails, etc. to do these surveys. And then I have, if you're interested, on the same page, you can scroll down. This is from 2017 on. Each year gets its own page for the results. So that's how you can find out what happened in past years. Okay, so that's where this information is held. So we're going to look at this Huachuca and Chiricahuas Mountains page. So I have them open already. So the Huachuca Mountains page has protocol and a data form. I would suggest that everyone at least look at the data form. We're going to look at it right now. Look at the data form, because if you can print it out, that's great. They're pretty helpful. But if you don't want to print it out, it's pretty simple what you need to collect. So come on, you can do it. And so what I really need from everybody, what the Google data entry form is going to ask for, is who you were, what route you did, date, etc. But what's really important to keep track of in the field, like in a notebook or on your phone or whatever, however works best for you, or on one of these data forms, is every time you encounter elegant trogons, I need you to keep track of the time that you have them, the number and sex of the trogons, whether it's a pair, whether it's two males, or even just an unknown sex of a trogon or a female. And then I need coordinates. If at all possible, I need coordinates. So these can be in UTMs, which is sort of the metric version. They can be in decimal degrees. If you really are not able to do coordinates, then I need sort of an approximation from your start, like, oh, half a mile from the start, etc. Or at the trail junction or something like that. But coordinates are absolutely the preferred way to do this. We do map our results, and I'll briefly show in a minute here the results of our last year's survey, just so you can see what I mean. We do visualize the results. That really helps us make sure we're not missing trogons or over counting trogons. And then any notes on behavior. And we'll talk about trogon behavior at the end. But if you see males arguing with each other, or a pair, like what seems like an obvious pair, or even if you find a nest and someone's bringing food or whatever behavior you noticed, or what type of call they're giving, which we'll talk about, keep track of that. So this is what really needs to happen. So you can easily do this in a notebook or something. It's just the time, how many and what sex they are, the location and coordinates, and then any behavior notes. And then on the back of this form, I do have a checklist of other species. This is entirely optional. And now that eBird has gotten so good with their phone, the free phone apps, that a lot of people just keep a checklist if they're up for it for the day on eBird. And then you can share that with AZIBA survey, which I did share in the email exactly. And it's I'll also put it in the follow-up email to remind everyone to do their data entry, as well as put that username again, so you don't have to memorize it or anything. So these checklists are from back in the day, and they definitely are from an era before eBird was so easy to use. Okay, so that's the data form, what I need everyone to make sure they collect when they're surveying for the day. And then I also have a scan of a good map if you would like to see a very good map. We did get special permission to make this available. It's a map of the Huachuca Mountains that you can look at if you're not sure, it's like, where's this trail that Jenny is on me? And also, if you're not sure what's going on, please give me a call later today or anytime tomorrow, and we can talk about it as well. Okay, so this is where the link will be for doing your online results. And then I have here, this is where the recording of today's video will go, is right here in the survey. And then I do have a map of where all the groups are. So this is something you can access and see the maps, because often the names of these groups get pretty specific, and the names of the routes on the document I sent out do match this interactive map. So you can zoom around. If you have stronger internet than me, it works especially well. But you can zoom around and zoom in and see where these areas are. Okay, so you can see sort of like how Ramsey has multiple routes coming through it, that kind of thing. You can see where they start and stop. So I do have a lot of helpful tools on this page specifically for the Huachucas. Okay, so the Huachucas, which I have the assignments already done. I see some of you are in here looking at it. The Huachucas have some quirks. It's a big mountain range, And two of the best canyons on the east side, so the Sierra Vista side, the east side of the Huachucas, two of the very best canyons for trogons are on the fort, on Fort Huachuca. If you have been assigned a Fort Huachuca route, which are any of the Garden Canyon associated routes and any of the Huachuca Canyon associated routes, so anything in this section here, which is Fort Huachuca routes, all the way until you get the Sierra Vista routes, are going to require a fort pass. Now, the last email I sent or the email I sent maybe 2 days ago, did talk about how to get a fort pass. Basically, you have to go to the Vandeman Gate. That's right where I think it's Highway 90 and 92 meets, or right as you're coming south of the Sierra Vista area. And it's the Vandeman Gate, and you have to turn in there, and there's a little portable building you can go into and get a pass. This can be done ahead of time, but if you can do it the evening before, if you're if you are in the Sierra Vista area. But if you're coming in from Tucson, you can do it on the way in. It is 24 hours open. So you can go in there. You do have to show them your driver's license. You have to fill out like a form, and then they look at that. They do run a little background check or something. I'm not exactly sure. And then they will issue you a pass. And depending on what mood they're in, sometimes the pass is good for a month. Sometimes it's good for a year. It depends, I think, on where you live as well. If your residency is in Arizona. So they give you a pass, and then you can use that pass to go in through the main gate or the Vandeman Gate, any of the two gates with that little card they give you with your picture on it and everything. And that gives you access into the fort. And it is worth the trouble because these are very, very good areas. And we are having an issue with Garden Canyon as well with a vehicle gate. So I was in Garden Canyon several weeks ago, and the gate was closed. So I did call the military police office, the MP's office for the fort, and asked them if the gate was still closed, and it is. And it has to do with like rain damage to the road that they still haven't fixed, which is why they have it closed. So you are allowed to go beyond the gate, but not in a vehicle. You can take a bike, you can take your feet, but they're not allowing cars up there right now. So because of that,
Jenny,
yes.
Jenny, can I interrupt?
Sure.
This is Pat. Okay. You do not get passes anymore.
Okay.
They attach it to your driver's license.
Really?
So in other words, your driver's license, they just take all the info off your driver's license, and that's what you show now to get in. They are issuing a paper pass.
Okay.
A couple of the gates that don't have manned services, but
okay.
There's no more passes given out.
Oh, geez. Okay. Because I still have my pass. It's still valid from, I think, last summer. And then when I did the Southwest Wings a few weeks ago, all my participants ended up having paper passes. Okay. So they're doing paper passes now. Okay.
That's for the unmanned gates or the closed gates, because there's a couple gates at the backside as well that don't have manning. So you have to have the paper, but other than that, your driver's license is your new pass.
Interesting. Okay, but they still need to go to the Vandeman Gate, the building to register. Okay. All right. Thank you, Pat. Gosh, Fort Huachuca is always mixing it up, man. They always keep it interesting. Thank you. I appreciate that, Pat. So if everyone understood what Pat was saying, that if you're going onto the fort, you don't already have a valid pass, then you need to go to that gate, and they will either attach it to it'll be part of your driver's license, will be registered, or we'll see. We'll see what happens, but they will let you know when you go into that office. Okay. So that's what's going on with the fort. Everything else, from what I understand, seems fine. All the Sierra Vista ones. So we got some Easy Canyon routes. I do have some routes I haven't assigned, and they are the least likely routes. But if you if you don't like your route, please do let me know. If there's an issue with your route, let me know, and we'll do what we can to adjust that for you. Okay. So, all right. So that's the Huachucas. I also have this good trail map here. That's a good reference. And then I also have a scan from the Tucson Audubon Finding Birds of Southeast Arizona book, a little scan of our section on the Huachuca Mountains, if anyone would like that background information. And that's more kind of a broad background information. Okay. So for the Chiricahuas, this mountain range works a little bit differently. So I think it's a good time to look at the results for last year too. So we can look at, so everyone get a sense of, in this map, the routes are the same as that reference map I showed. That's on the page, that also linked to on the description form. So it's the link right here. This is the routes without any results on it. But the map I have for last year's results, it does this very well too. So here's the Huachucas before we leave the Huachucas here. And you have Many of the routes are what we call the east side, which is sort of the Sierra Vista side, and then here's the fort in gray, but the green here, the east side. And then we have the west side routes. So this area is also very good for trogons, but less developed in terms of signage, and you have to sort of be comfortable in more of a backcountry setting through the west side. And we had a really good mix of volunteers this year, and I have really good coverage on both, so that's been great. I've been able to get most everything covered on east and west side, which is really good. So this is how the Huachucas work. Now the Chiricahuas, you see in the Huachucas you have trogons through much of the range. The Chiricahuas are a little bit different, but also one of the more famous areas for trogons in Southeast Arizona. You have the west side of the Chiricahuas with several routes. So I have a team doing Rucker, I have a person doing Turkey Creek. But most of the action, if not nearly most of the action, is on the east side. So this is the famous portal area. Many of you who signed up are familiar with this, but I know a few who've signed up. This will be your first visit to Portal, which is very exciting. It's a very beautiful area. But Portal is densely packed with good birds and trogon territories. So I have all these different little routes going up sort of the main part of Cave Creek, and then it splits off into South Fork, the famous South Fork. And then you have North Fork over to Herb Martyr, and then North Fork continues up towards Paradise. So these are where many of you doing the Chiricahuas survey will be stationed. And on the Chiricahua specific page from that main Trogon page on the Arizona IBA website, we do have lots of good information. I have the directions and protocol again. The data form is very similar, where what I really need is I need the time, the number of trogons, and the sex of them, if you can tell. And if you don't know, just put unknown sex, and then coordinates, and then any notes on behavior. So I also have, again, the section from the book, Finding Birds in Southeast Arizona from Tucson Audubon. I have the scan section about the Chiricahuas, if you're not too familiar with that area. One thing to keep in mind about the Chiricahuas, if it is your first visit to this area, is that there is no gas available in Portal. You need to come in to Portal off of I-10, or whichever way you're coming, whether you're coming through San Simon or down the 80, whichever way you're coming in the Portal, make sure you have a full tank of gas before you head into, coming in for your final, into the Portal area, because there are no gas stations in Portal, just FYI. There are a few places to buy some food, and there are a lot of campgrounds, but there's no gas. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. And again, have the link to do the entry, and then this will be updated to the new video later today. And I also have, again, the link to the map showing all the different routes. Okay. So let's see here. I don't know of anything strange going on in Chiricahuas, and I have been talking to people who live out there. So I think we're all good out there with roads and access, and everything else is good and normal. Looking at the eBird data so far for Southeast Arizona, both the Huachucas and the Chiricahuas are looking good. They're both looking, a lot of people have been reporting trogons. I think it's going to be a really good weekend. The weather looks good. All those logistics look great. So there's been quite a lot of reports in South Fork and the Chiricahuas area, which is by far the heaviest birded area. And then in the Chiricahuas, and then the Huachucas have been looking really good too. So some of these areas I looked, some of our routes doesn't look like they've been birded yet this year. So we may still find additional, I'm expecting us to find additional trogons in addition to what's been e-birded. Okay. All right. So let's see how we're doing on time. All right. So let's look at the data form. So once you get your data, you're out there, you've done your survey. When you go back to, this can happen later that day of the survey. It can happen the next day, but I recommend you do it within a day or two, so you remember all the details of what happened. But we do have our this is the all right. So this is the link. I'll send it out again too to make sure everyone has it. But this is the link where you're going to do your data entry. You're going to put, oh good, it still has the fake ones I put in to show you guys the next page. So you put in your email, your name, your phone number, etc., and then which survey you're reporting on. So they all go into one hub, which is really helpful to us later when we do the data collating. The name of your route, very important, and then just a few basic questions. Did you do your whole route? Because it's okay if something happens, like you're getting overheated or something, and you can't finish your route. That's totally fine. Everyone's safety is my number one priority, like for sure. And that's where you can express that something happened, like, oh, I wasn't able to do the whole route or whatever. Or there was a gate in the middle of the road and we couldn't reach it or whatever, that kind of thing. So And then just some information about how far you walked. And this is just helps us over time track effort, sort of like we do with the Christmas bird count. And then this is where you can put your eBird list. Again, mentioned sharing your eBird list with AZIBA survey, that username. And then just a total number of trogons. Okay, so this is really important. So if you are doing your route and you like, boy, I had 6 detections of trogons, but I think it was 3. I think they were following me around, or whatever your best judgment is on what your total number of trogons was. It's pretty important that this get put here, because then that helps me later when I'm like looking at, you'll see when we go to the next page, it helps me understand what you're trying to say in terms of okay, well, they have 4 coordinates for this male, but I realize I see that they think it's just 1 bird. Okay, so that's really a really good double check. So your gut reaction, your gut sense on how many total trogons you had. If you think that was a pair, even though you didn't see that female, it's a pair. Okay, so we'll talk about that too. So the total number based on your best judgment is a really important one that gets filled in. And then just any survey comments. And I do sort of try to explain this so it's more clear when you're doing it too, but like especially describe if you're, so this is more about the route. Oh, the route had water. Oh, we saw a troop of coatis, whatever. Anything about the day itself, not so much a Trogon sighting, can go here in this survey comments area. And then it's going to ask, did you have any Trogons? And the reason it's asking that is because I set this up so that it works in multiple pages. And it's very, rather than have you people who didn't have any Trogons have to look at all this stuff about entering info about Trogons, it asks you, and this is what page it shows you next is specific to how you answer this question. So did you have any Trogons? Okay, so it says if you say no, the data entry is over. If you say yes, you're taken to another section. So we're gonna say yes. Let's see if this works. Because I put in fake info to make it show us. So then I have like 5 or 6 of these pages that will show up if you need them, but you're going to do each Trogon occurrence one by one on these pages. So this is Trogon details 1. So if you have a pair or a lone male or a female, and it has all the options here, you're going to do a page for it. So okay, it's a pair of birds, okay, pair of Trogons, or a lone male, or whatever it was. And then what was the time? What was the location? Now, sometimes people, and I've added this over time because it's been needed, if people will sometimes be like, okay, I had it at this location, but then I heard it as I hiked up to this location. This is a place to put a second set of coordinates if you need to or want to. But what I really need is just 1. But if you want to say it moved from here to here, that's how you can do this, is with this second place to enter it. And then just any notes or observations about their behavior. That's going to ask, do you have another pair or single Trogon to report? You hit yes, it's going to take you to another page that looks exactly like this. And just keep doing that so you don't have any more Trogons to report. And then you hit no, and it takes you to like a thank you page, and then you can submit the survey. So this is how we're going to do our data entry. And you can see it's not asking for a whole lot for each Trogon, just sort of your whether you think it was a pair, a male, a female, a lone subadult, or a lone unknown, or you have an other. And I have people who use this a lot. So it'll be like, oh, 2 males arguing or whatever. So there's an other that you can type in if you need to have something more specific. All right, so then that's how we do our data entry. I am planning on doing an online Elegant Trogon Surveyor party where people can share stories with what they had, and we can go over the results before anything. Because I always have you guys, the surveyors, see the results first. Like first I send them out so that we can sort of double check them, and people do. Somebody's like, no, Jenny, it wasn't there. It was here, whatever. Oh, I didn't have 2, I had 3 Trogons. It's sort of a final check like that after we get everything mapped. And then once that's all handled, we do our online party, and then you guys get to see the overall results first before anybody else does. I think that's kind of fun, and you guys definitely deserve it. But I have started an online Google album, which I will share. So I think I've already shared the link, but I'll add you all as people who can add photos. And this is where people can share the photos they take during the day. So that's just a reminder that if you're up for it and you want to, try to remember to take nice photos. People do scenic shots, other birds, of course, lots of Trogons, selfies of the team. If someone saw a bear from the Patagonias, oh my gosh, bluebirds, whatever. So just fun photos of the day, and we'll share this during our parties. Wow. Okay. So let me stop sharing my screen for a moment so I can see you all, make sure I don't have anybody. Okay. So before I move on to Trogon stuff, like how to look for Trogons, sort of sounds they make, and what those different sounds mean, as far as we can tell. Does anyone have any questions on the logistics of these surveys, the Huachucas and Chiricahuas? Good. Okay. Also, please do, I think I keep sharing it over and over again. If you'd like to talk to me privately offline or want to email or text me, my phone number, my cell number, I've been sharing several times. So go ahead and just give me a call if you have specific questions, or text me. I also will be checking my email. I'm not camping for the Huachucas for this one, so I'll be around through Friday evening. But then I will be off, of course, with many of you, Saturday morning into a no signal area. Okay. So I'm going to reshare my screen, and then we're going to talk about Trogons themselves. Okay. All right. So this is linked to this page here from Cornell about Trogons. It's linked to on the main. It's really good, and it's linked to on this sort of main Trogon hub page. I have it down here somewhere. It's identification tips from Cornell can be found here. So this is what I'm going to show in a minute, but it's very good. But I also have some really good links here that are specific to us that I will show in a moment. All right, but first about Trogons from Cornell. So these are male Trogons. Of course, the first photos on this page are of the beautiful male Elegant Trogon, and they are absolute stunners. And you look at this bird and you see, oh, this is a bright red, green, and white bird. There's no way I'll miss this in the field. Of course I'll see it if it's anywhere near me. And they are very good at hiding. Trogons are hard to see. There's a reason they're on a lot of people's most wanted list for birding. They are pretty noisy, especially in May, which is part of the reason we do these surveys in May, is because they're calling a lot, but they're not usually on eggs yet or nesting quite yet. Because then once they start being on eggs, sort of at the very end of May into June, and then they have babies in July and August during the monsoon, where there's lots of insects to feed them. So in May, they're very noisy, but we also have the least amount of chance of disrupting them or disturbing them while they're nesting. So that's why we do this timing. Especially, I know it gets a little rough sometimes. Like, why is it Memorial Day weekend? It's been Memorial Day weekend for many, many years. Before I coordinated the survey, it was traditionally on this weekend, the Huachucas and the Chiricahuas. But also, it's really good timing for them on their nesting schedule, where they're noisy. They're usually on their territories by now. They're not still so much zooming around looking for territories, which can make a really confusing results map. They're pretty much on territory, but they shouldn't really be on eggs yet. But there's always, sometimes people do see active nests at this stage. Some more experienced birds, I think, just get right down to it as soon as they show up and just start nesting, getting ready to go. And also with all the winter rain we have this year, I'm not really sure what the timing of these birds is going to be, but usually that's generally why we do it in May. They're usually not nesting yet. But they're beautiful birds. They're quite large. They're like, I'd say, Mexican jay size. They're quite big. And they have this really interesting posture, unlike any other sort of bird in North America, or in the United States, because there's a lot of trogons in Mexico. But in the United States, they have this really interesting way of sitting, where they do sort of do a little bit of a hunchback look. Their feet are rather high up on their body. And so they do this sort of really interesting way of sitting, like the way this female sitting. They're usually very upright, but their feet sort of pretty high up on their body. So it looks like half the trogon is below a branch. It's a very distinctive way they sit. And sometimes you'll see them in silhouette. And you're like, what is that bird? Because their shape is so different from most other birds. So this also leads me to what a female looks like. But many people are familiar with the male. He's behind me on my background here because they're so famous, and also from our festival logo from a few years ago. Very, very well-known image, the male, but here's a female, and they do look quite a lot different. And so she's got these warm brown tones. Everywhere he's sort of green, she's brown. And reminds me a lot of the difference between a vermilion flycatcher male and female, where the female is sort of grayish, but she does have some rosy pink on the lower belly. She's also really showing well this posture, the way they sit with their feet so high up. And they have these long tails, quite long tails. And on the underside of their tail, which you can see when they're facing you, they have this lovely fine barring, very, very fine, like an art pen on white paper, very beautiful. And then as you see one from behind, though, so here's a male from behind. They have these gray wing patches, this iridescent green, and the really pretty iridescent coppery tail on the back of the tail. But the female on the back also shows this coppery tail, but a brown back and sort of grayish, more pale gray wings. And the female also has this distinctive white teardrop mark on the side of her face going below her eye. Very pretty. And they are, they do eat a lot of fruit, elegant trogons. They eat quite a list of one of the pyracantha, which many of you may have seen, like in Madera Canyon, especially in the winter. They eat a lot of fruit. But when it comes to nesting, they are cavity nesters. So they like sycamore trees because sycamore trees will sort of naturally on their own shed branches and create cavities that the trogons can excavate a little. They can excavate a little bit. They'll pull like some wood chips out, but they can't really make a hole the way a woodpecker can. So sometimes they use sort of the ends of branches of sycamores that they can pull some stuff out over time. Or they like to use woodpecker holes, especially flicker, a big hole made by a northern flicker they can use. So I know they're strongly associated with sycamore trees, and this does look like a sycamore in the photo here. They're strongly associated with sycamores, but they will use woodpecker holes and pines and oaks. So if you're in an area and you're not seeing sycamores, there won't be trogons here. There very well could, because they will use woodpecker holes in other trees. And I have seen them in areas with no sycamores around at all, nesting. All right, so it's a beautiful male, gorgeous bird, hanging out on a branch. So they don't always, but they do tend to sit in the mid-story. They have this really distinctive posture. They have a quite extravagant tail, and they do sometimes fan it like this when they're flying. They also have this really interesting, that's a juvenile. So the juvenile has a little bit of green coming in because it's a young male, but still has the teardrop mark of a female, and little short wings and little short tails. How you know you're seeing a juvenile. They're not usually around in May, but every now and then we do get one on a survey. So that is the way trogons look. They're very, very beautiful. I do have a really cool, it's only going to about a minute, maybe less than a minute of it, but it's a really nice video that someone, that Cornell has put up, that someone got of a very relaxed trogon, having a little preen sitting up in a tree, and he's going to make some noise, and then we'll talk about the sounds. So that is one of the more quiet calls that they do. And also this how relaxed this bird is, just like chilling, just preening. So they do some different sounds. And this is really important to talk about because this is one of the main ways trogons are detected is audio. They don't always, they usually don't make themselves visually obvious. Okay, they're aware. Those males are aware that their belly is bright red. They don't like to show it as much if they feel like they're being looked at, is my impression, my anthropomorphized impression of them. And they will sort of turn the green back to you. And it can be very, very effective at hiding. They're also really good at staying still if they will sort of swoop and perch, and they will sit there without moving for minutes and minutes and minutes, which can also make it very difficult to see them. But they do make quite a lot of noise, especially the males in May. So this is what we consider the song, okay? They have a few different tones of this, but this is the song, right? Also, the ones we have in Southeast Arizona, if you see this on apps or anything, you have coppery tail. These are subspecies, coppery tail versus elegant. Coppery tail is the one we have. Elegant is the one much further south. So that's one version of what we call the coink call, and I'll show you a guide to the sounds in a moment. That's part of the loudest call. That is the one I think of as like when we think about songbirds singing, where males are saying, "This is my territory," or they're saying, "Hey, ladies, I'm available." Or if they're paired up, they'll sometimes still do this call because they're saying, all the other trogons, stay out of my territory, or this is my territory. They're just declaring as a male singing bird, this is my territory. And then they have this other sound. Another version of sort of a Actually, no, I said that wrong. They do this sometimes, and this is more similar to what the bird was doing in the video, where it's a much quieter call. I know they sound kind of the same volume on these recordings because they're really good recordings. But when you're in the field, and you hear this more of a more of a burry cha 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 call, that's more of like a contact call. Okay, it's not nearly as loud, and often when you hear it, the trogon is a lot closer than you may think because that call doesn't carry all that far. And I have a better recording we'll play in a moment too. And that sort of gives you a really good clue that the trogon is doing something where it's talking to another trogon, often a pair, often as females, usually who he's talking to. I have heard male trogons don't do that call when they're talking to each other. And then you kind of hear both of them doing it. And it gets kind of clear, okay, well, these are two males, because then they'll all kind of alternate between clinking and then doing this cha-cha-cha call to each other. I think of it as sort of like it's an intimate call. Okay, so either it's a male talking to this female, which I think is usually what it is. I have heard though males do this to each other, and it's like they're discussing maybe where our boundary is. That's always the vibe I get when I hear it between two males. It's like, well, no, this is where we said the line is. Okay, so they're sort of discussing it back and forth. But usually when you hear that cha cha cha, it indicates a pair. Every now and then you will hear females call. It is. I haven't heard it very much. I've only heard it after all these years doing the survey. I've heard it probably fewer than 5 times. Females call, but it is pretty distinctive because when they call, they'll do the cha-cha too sometimes, especially in response to her partner, her male. But it is at least an octave lower pitch. You hear like a baritone trogon out there, that's probably a female. They sound much lower and they call much less frequently than the males do. So here's the third call you might hear. So that's often labeled as an alarm call, and I have heard it as an alarm call. But it's also a call they give a lot in the winter. So if we do get a few overwintering trogons some years. So if you hear that in a canyon in the winter, that seems to be kind of the only call they give in the winter, and it's not always alarmed. But when you hear it in the spring, and it can sound very alarmed. And if you hear that, it gets your ear because it sounds like this bird is very, very alarmed. And you can tell it is anthropomorphizing to an extent, but it also just, you can tell they sound distressed. If you hear that kind of sound and it sounds distressed, you're probably near a nest. And you need to sort of back away. Keep an eye, you don't have to like flee the area, but I would certainly back off from the direction that you heard it from. Maybe hide behind some vegetation or a tree and sort of keep an eye on what's going on because you might be quite near a nest, which is a pretty special thing to see, especially if you can sort of back off to a safe distance and they calm down and will go back to their nest. So, so this is what Cornell has available, but on our webpage, on our specific page here for the overall Trogon surveys, I do have some interesting resources here. And one of them is this link here, which is call info for Elegant Trogon's Auto Taylor book scan link. And that is a scan from a few pages of this book by Rick Taylor, who founded these surveys in the Huachucas and Chiricahuas years ago. And then we added, Tucson added the Santa Ritas and Patagonias and Atascosas. But this book here, which is out of print, and Rick has very nicely let us put a scan of the pages that talk about the calls on this website. But if you ever see this book around at a used book sale, it's really interesting. It talks about trogons of Arizona. Anyway, so the scan from that book is right here on the website, and you can take a look at it. And this talks about some of the various calls that trogons make and what Rick thought, spending a lot of time with the trogon, what these different calls meant. So it's a really interesting read about trogons. So it's this chapter 6 called Ego of the Trogon. And it talks about communication. Okay, so we have the coink call, which is the first one we talked about. And I'll play all these 3 again. And these are what the 3 main calls. I think we have the coink call, which is very much by a male to delimit its territory and advertise for females. Okay, so this is more like singing, and it's the loudest call. And all that really tells you, if you're hearing it, is that you have a male. That's what it's telling you. There's a male trogon in that direction, and he's advertising his territory. It doesn't mean they're not paired. They will still do this when they're paired, but they also do it when they're not paired. So all this really tells you is that you have a male and he is over there and he is declaring this is his territory. Okay, which is a lot. That's a lot of information, but that's what it's telling you. We hear the cha call, that this is more of more of a furry sound. It's not nearly as loud. And this is something that either they do to their mates, or that they're doing it sort of to other males. And like he says here, it indicates a different level of intensity. I think it's a good way to put it, is that it's sort of a more communicative call between trogons, usually a pair. Okay. And then we have here the wikiki, which he put here, and that is the sort of alarm call. Okay. So yeah, so right here, wikiki, adult trogons use this call to express alarm. But I also hear him do it in the winter too. And when they're doing it as an alarm sound, it is very, very alarm sounding. They really do sound quite alarmed. So I also have audio. Oh, did I do that? Okay. Of course, took my tab away. Go back. Okay. So I also have here 3 recordings that are MP3 files that you can download if you would like. And these are from Zeno Canto. Actually, no, I think they're actually from AZFO. They're from AZFO. And you can listen to these. Oh, sorry, from Zeno Canto. That one's Zeno Canto. Okay. So we can just listen to it here on the website, and we're going to in a moment. Or if you right click on these and do save link as, you can save these MP3s if you would like. Okay, so very distinctive call in that it is notes, like 5 to 7 notes repeated, coink, 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 and then like a gap, a pause that goes on for seconds, quite a while, and then they do it again. So it's a series of calls that are very steady, and then a silent gap, and then they do it again. So it's very distinctive, and that's the male advertising territorial call. Okay, so then here's the what we call the cow call, or the cha-cha-cha. So if you put that in your behavior notes, oh, I heard the cha-cha-cha or the cow. I know what you mean. You mean this one right here, this more quiet. That's the one that is much quieter. If you hear it, you're probably much closer to the trogon than you might be if you hear the coink call, which carries much further. And this can indicate, that they're paired, they have a female, or that they're talking to another male or something. But it usually means there's more than one trogon around. That's what that usually means. So then just give it a little time and see if you can infer what's going on. But when I hear that cha-cha-cha and there's not him arguing with another male, I really do then, if I feel like it is a pair, I'll put that down as a pair, even if you don't see or hear the female. Okay, so then here's the alarm call, or the wiki call. Doing it together, it's probably the pair. And if you hear that, definitely don't go towards that sound. You want to back off a little until they calm down, and you can sort of watch and see what's going on with them, because you really don't want to be coming at them much closer, because they're alarmed, and we don't want to be disrupting their nesting at all. Okay, so I also realized I forgot to cover something about logistics, and I'll do that real quick. There are a few places on the surveys this weekend for the Huachucas. You are not allowed to use playback. And what I mean by that is play a call and then hope for a response. So you're not supposed to use playback on the Fort Huachuca or in the Ramsey Canyon area. But the other areas, if you would like, and if you're like, did I hear a trogon? I'm not sure. Or this looks like really good habitat. Are there trogons here? If you play any of those first 2 calls, I wouldn't do the alarm call, but if you play the quick call from an app on your phone, like any of the Bird ID apps, or if you download an MP3 from the website here, especially in May, that can really elicit a response. Okay, so it works quite well. The protocol document does talk about this. I don't have any sort of set protocol on where exactly or how often you should play back. Just sort of use your best judgment, and if you are in an area where it is not prohibited. So you can play, I usually alternate between the 2. I'll play the first one, the male point call, and then the cha-cha-cha like a minute later to see if I can get a Trogon response. If you're not sure, if you heard one that's going to work really well, to sort of nail it down, be like, did I hear one? I think I did. And then if it can get a little confusing though, because then they will sometimes come in closer. So if you hear one, sometimes it's better to just keep moving towards it to get a more accurate point of where its territory actually is, rather than have it come to you and then you get kind of a false reading and then you keep going. It's like, is this the same bird following me? So, but it can still be very effective to use callback if you're not sure if you had a Trogon, or if this looks like a really good area, like, are Trogons here? I don't hear any. You can play, and that can sometimes get them to call back. But for the Huachucas, this sort of thing is prohibited on the fort and in Ramsey Canyon. When you're in the Chiricahuas, it is prohibited in South Fork. Okay. And the Forest Service prohibits it. South Fork or Cave Creek, I mean, the famous trail where many of the routes are. But it also has a logistics issue too, where there's a lot of birders, a lot of hikers in South Fork and in Ramsey Canyon. A lot of people looking for Trogons, and the two canyons on the fort, Garden Canyon and Huachuca Canyon. There's a lot of people looking for Trogons, and playing Trogon sounds could make people think that there's a real Trogon there, and then they might rush over. So there's a lot of good logistical reasons for it as well. But also it is prohibited in those areas. But other areas, so if you're on the west side of the Huachucas, or you're in, I don't know, some of these other canyons where you're not on the fort and you're not in Ramsey, if you want to, you certainly can. It is not required, but it is certainly something that is totally fine for this protocol to do a little playback to try to make sure you're not missing programs. Okay, I think we covered everything. It is a lot, and I know I've been sending a lot of info emails, but I think it's good to have both sort of this meeting where I can sort of just say it all at you, but also then you have sort of a written copy as well via email. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open this up for questions, and if anyone has a question they don't want in the video when I stop recording, you can stick around. Yes, Ben.
Hey, thanks for hosting this. This was really informative. This is my first survey. I wonder what kind of pacing like you suggest for, like, say, like the route is 1.3 miles. Should we be just like walking for a few minutes, stopping, walking for a few minutes, stopping, or like yeah, like what do people typically do as far as that?
That's a really good question, Ben. Thank you. And so this gets kind of different too between the two mountain ranges, so I can talk about that. So if it's a 1.3 mile route, I think the normal birding pace is really quite good. Of when you get activity, you stay and you're like looking at it for, looking at all the different birds, you're listening for Trogons. But yes, I think moving not too fast. You don't want to be moving through these routes too quickly. Sort of a normal birding walking pace, and then stopping every now and then to really listen, or did I hear something? And then listening is the way to go, especially in the Huachucas, where pretty much all these routes are routes where you're moving through an area. You start spending the morning hiking through your route and just trying to see if there's Trogons along the way. You don't want to go too slow either, because you don't want to be too late by the time you get to your endpoint. But yeah, just sort of use your best judgment on that. But I think your description of what you're thinking there sounds good, of walking for a little while and then listening, or if you see a lot of bird activity, really listening. Another good thing to keep in mind too is that what we call confluences can be very good for Trogons. This is where sort of two creeks will meet, or if you're in a drainage and you have another drainage coming in from the side, these can be excellent spots for Trogons. I feel like they do tend to really like confluences with other birds too. But they are primarily insect hunters in the spring and in summer. So confluences have more water, and therefore they have more food and bugs. So definitely spend a little time lingering at confluences and really listen. If you're in an area where you can do playback, I always do playback at confluences as I'm moving through an area. I do in other places too, but I always hit those confluences with playback. Because sometimes you have another Trogon up that side drainage, and you hear it calling from down there. That can be another Trogon that you can put on your count. So that's really very good question. Now for the Chiricahuas, some of the routes are more sort of longer and hiking routes. Many of the routes, because the Chiricahuas were still using sort of the traditional protocol that has been used for many years, especially around places like South Fork and North Fork, where we have a lot of small territories kind of lined up right next to each other. If you're in one of those smaller territories in South Fork or North Fork, you're more, and the protocol talks about this, it's more like you want to go much slower. You want to get to your territory if you're like hiking up south or kind of hustle up to it. But once you're in your territory, you want to be spending a lot of time in that territory, kind of staying put for a little while, and then moving a little further and staying put, then moving a little further and staying put. And because we're really trying to get a sense of what time trogons are heard and where. And in these areas like South Fork, you sometimes get wandering males that go up and down the canyon. And it's so funny to look at the data because you can kind of see by the times that people document that they had a bird that stayed put in their territory, or sort of like their bird. But then there's like another one that roams up and down. You can really see it in the data. So you want to go slower on these Chiricahuas, like South Fork routes or North Fork routes, where they're really kind of a lot of them jammed in. You can see that on the map. But for the Huachucas, pretty much all the routes in the Huachucas, we're just sort of moving through our territory through the morning at a more or less steady pace, lingering in the areas that look like better habitat, if that makes sense. That's a very good question. Okay. All right. Anyone else have any other questions? Okay. And also, please do feel free to give me a call or shoot me a text or an email. I'll be checking email. But yeah, I think it's going to be a really fun weekend. We're going to get a lot of trogon sightings, I hope. And I think pretty much everyone is in a territory that is pretty likely to have trogons. But even if you don't get trogons, us being able to confirm that for this year, that territory, there weren't any, is really very helpful, especially since we're starting to look at this data in a long-term sense. Since we're over 10 years now doing this. And it's really interesting to be looking at this data over time, and we can see things like how rainfall is starting to affect trogon numbers, but not only that, sort of affecting where trogons are and where they're not. And sometimes if you don't have a trogon in your area and you confirm that by surveying it, but there was one the year before, the year after, that's very, very important information for us. So doing some of this long-term analysis of what's going on with these trogons in the Sky Island mountain ranges of Southeast Arizona. So this is really very good stuff. So even if you don't get a trogon, it's still incredibly important information that we didn't just assume there wasn't a trogon there. But all these routes we're doing this year are all very, very possible. So good luck to everybody. And again, I just want to reiterate that safety is my number one concern. I do want everyone to be safe. If it looks like, if you're feeling too hot or it's looking like you're not going to get any further, please do turn around. Please do go back. I really want everyone to be as safe as possible. Your safety is most important. The trogon safety is second most important. So if you're hearing that alarm call, back off. And then I also want everyone to get good data and have fun. But they go in that order. Your safety is the number one priority. I did put this in the emails, but also if you can, please do text me as you leave your route and get into signal. It can be a little challenging in the Chiricahuas, I know that, but it doesn't have to be like by a certain time or anything, just by the afternoon. If you're having a good morning and you're out burning and the Trogon survey has ended, it's past 11, and you're out there and you have a good morning, I don't want people having to hustle back to text me, but if you could just sort of text me later in the day, just for my peace of mind that everyone's safe and back at their vehicle, I'd really appreciate it. And another thing too, I mean, the protocol talks about the survey running to 11, but you don't need to go all the way to 11. If it's getting too hot or you feel like you got your route, it's like 10 o'clock and you feel like you've done it and you know what's going on, you can go ahead and start heading out. You don't have to go all the way to 11, especially since it is maybe heating up a little bit for this weekend. But also when people finishing too early, but if it's like past 9:30 and you feel like you've done it, go ahead. But you can go up to 11. Protocol allows it up to 11, but we won't really want people surveying much later. Okay, so you can still stay out there and bird if you'd like, but the Trogon survey officially sort of ends at 11, and you can end it a little earlier if you feel like you need to, or that you already got what's going on. Okay. All right, let's see here. Any other questions?
Hey, just one quick question, just to clarify. In the email, and you talked about this briefly, just to make sure, just because I'm driving in from Tempe. I have to go up to the Van Diemen Gate, and I have to get that pass. I can do that the night before. Is that correct?
You certainly can. Yes, this is for the Huachuca Mountains, any of the routes on the Fort Huachuca. You can get your pass the day before, the evening before if you would like. You can also come a little early and do it the morning of. It is open 24 hours.
Okay, right on. Good deal. Thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you all so much. And let's see.